Well, half a century after Freedom Summer, a new report suggests much work remains to be done. According to the report, minority voters continue to be locked out of statewide politics. Minority candidates rarely get elected to statewide office. It features state-by-state graphics that demonstrate how a targeted wave of voter registration could shift the balance of power in key southern states. The report is called True South: Voters of Color in the Black Belt 50 years after Freedom Summer. And it was just released by Southern Elections Foundation, the Center for American Progress. For more, we go to Baltimore, Maryland, where we're joined by the report's author, Ben Jealous, partner at Kapoor Capital, senior fellow at Center for American Progress. He's the former NAACP president and CEO. Ben Jealous, welcome back to Democracy Now! Talk about True South. What's happening today?
You know, look, when we talk about the South, which is a region that if you're from it, you love, we typically these days, when you get into politics, come back quickly to the topic of vote suppression. I mean, here we are again, 100 years after the rise of Jim Crow, seeing new laws pushed through to suppress the vote. The problem, if we stop there, is we don't get to the fact that for the past 50 years, we have known how to deal with massive vote suppression, which is massive voter registration. And the purpose of this report is to show people that state by state, we can actually unleash democracy and get to a place where that, if you will, that dormant moral majority of working class whites and voters of color who really, at the end of the day, when you listen, are concerned about the same basic kitchen table issues, about making sure that kids can get a good education, making sure that people, you know, their neighbors have access to good jobs. We actually now can unleash that that majority throughout the South by knitting together voters of color and working class whites if we choose. And all we have to do is just get out there and do what we did 50 years ago in Freedom Summer and the years after in the black community, but do it not just in, do it in today's South, which isn't just black and white, but is black and white and brown and yellow and red, and sign up folks with the intention of, quite frankly, empowering them so that our politics truly represent our region and the people of it.
Ben Jealous, your report says that such a drive could have a major impact on elections in several key states that are traditionally Republican. Can you explain?
Sure. I mean, look at Georgia right now, right? There are 830,000 unregistered people of color right now. There's 600,000 unregistered blacks. If we signed up 45% of the unregistered people of color there, the new voters that would yield. So if you take that 45%, about 400,000, and then you reduce it, if you will, by the percentage of newly signed up voters who tend not to show up to vote, you would still exceed the margin of victory in the past several statewide races. So, Governor Deal won by 258,000 votes. This would yield, more than 300,000 new voters. Similarly, in states like Virginia, where my family hails from, you're talking about signing up maybe 10% of the black voters who have yet to sign up to vote in that state or are currently not signed up to vote. So depending on the state, it could be 10% of the black voters. It could be 45% of the voters of color. At the end of the day, these are things that are very doable. It costs, depending on who does it, between $8 and $20 to sign up a new voter. So at the end of the day, you're talking about an investment given the state of maybe $3 million in a state like Virginia, maybe $12 million in a state like Georgia, to really get to a place again where this dormant majority, this dormant moral majority of working class whites and voters of color could finally have their say in statewide politics.
South Carolina, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, in South Carolina, which quite frankly, somebody who cut their teeth organizing in Mississippi was probably the one state that we considered sort of harder to crack than Mississippi. It's the home of the Citadel, and in many ways, been a violently repressive state where they still fly the Confederate battle flag in front of their state capitol every day. There are 350,000 unregistered black voters, and the Tea Party governor won by 60,000 votes. It is very doable to finally unleash the vote at the statewide level, even in a tough state like that, again, it might cost $4 or $5 million, which is big money to me and to you. But, when the Democratic Party is running $1 billion presidential campaigns, the fact that they don't invest is just foolish. And I think it comes down, quite frankly, to people who don't know the South being in power in these institutions and saying, well, nothing's changed, so why should we invest? Well, it turns out lack of investment is the surest form of historic preservation. Things haven't changed because they haven't invested. And if they do invest, things will change and could change very, very quickly.
Vangela, so on an organizing level, what would a voter drive look like on this mass scale that you're proposing? And what are the main obstacles that it would face?
It would look very much like folks are doing in Mississippi right now, in some ways, a Freedom Summer redux, which is less about people coming from outside the South into the South to actually sign up people to vote, as was needed at a time when it was so dangerous 50 years ago, to really get the bravest people from wherever they would come. To just simply people working with the students who are there, with their neighbors, and deciding to just get it done. Deciding, look, we have kind of inched up, getting more and more people signed up to vote over the past 50 years. Well, let's just push over the finish line and actually get our region in this great Western democracy up to where most Western democracies are, with virtually everyone signed up to vote. So it's about using big data, which makes it much easier because you know exactly who isn't signed up to vote, having a big vision, setting big goals, and then making a big change by simply empowering your neighbors to vote.